This is going to be our final video in our Chapter 6 content. This video is going to be about solving radical equations. Radical, dude! I know, not that funny, but it's okay. So, radical equations. We're talking about equations with roots in them, right? Square roots, cube roots, fourth roots, eighth roots, 164th roots, etc. Right? Yay, happy day. Okay, so let's dive right in. In fact, we're going to jump right in with an example. Okay, so our first example is going to be the square root of x plus 2. All that's under the square root. Plus 4 equals 7. All right, so let's go ahead and solve this. Almost always, one of our first steps is going to be to isolate the radical. Okay, so we're going to, in this case, we're going to subtract 4 from both sides. Okay? So when we subtract 4 from both sides, we are left with the square root of x plus 2 equals 3, right? Now, how do we get rid of square root? Well, we do the opposite, just like we would do any other time. So the opposite of square root is squaring. So we're going to square both sides. Square and square root cancel, leaving us with just x plus 2 on this side. When we square 3, 3 squared is 9, because 3 times 3 is 9. Then we're going to subtract off the 2. That cancels, leaving us with x equals 7. Now, the last step we have to do, this is the step that everybody kind of hates, and even sometimes math teachers will kind of fudge over a little bit if they're in a hurry, is the check phase. Now, with a radical equation, you have to check because there might be what's called extraneous solutions. What that crazy word extraneous means is that there might be a solution that doesn't actually work. This answer might really have no solution. So let's double check our problem. So if we plug in 7 in for x, we end up with the square root of 7 plus 2 plus 4 equals 7. All right, so the square root, this ends up the square root of 9 plus 4 equals 7, because 7 plus 2 is 9. And the square root of 9 is 3, so this ends up being 3. Whoa, I wrote the wrong word. Wrong thing. 3 plus 4 equals 7, and 7 does in fact equal 7. I jumped the gun. 7 equals 7, so check mark. This answer does work. Yay. All right, let's do another example. See if we can get the same sort of luck on the next one. Let's do the square root of x minus 12 equals 2 times the square root of x. Ooh, minus the square root of x. Sorry, I didn't read my writing right. So this time we have 2 radicals. This becomes a little bit more complicated. Now, so we've isolated the big one. We can go ahead and square both sides and see what happens. Remember, when we're solving equations, you're not necessarily looking for what the best thing to do next is, because you might not know. You're just looking for something that's legal. So it is legal to square both sides. So let's do that, because that'll at least get rid of this one square root. So over here on the left-hand side, we're left with just x minus 12 equals. Now this one, we're going to use our FOIL trick because we're squaring a binomial. So 2 squared is 4, and then for the middle, we multiply them together and then multiply it times 2. So it's going to be negative 4 times the square root of x. And the last one, we square it. So it's going to be, excuse me, plus x, because the square root of x squared is x. Looks good so far. Now, we're going to have to go and we're going to have to isolate this square root right there. So let's see what we can do for that. Let's go ahead and subtract the x off of both sides. So subtract the x from here, and it goes with this guy right there. We can go ahead and subtract this 4 from both sides. So minus 4 and then minus 4. All right, so this x cancels and that x cancels. That's great. That makes our life a lot easier. Okay, and these 4s cancel. So we are left with negative 16 equals negative 4 times the square root of x. All right, that's easy because the negative 4 is multiplied. So to get rid of it, we are going to divide both sides by negative 4. Negative 4. Okay, so those cancel, leaving us with just the, I'm going to switch it around so it's more like what we're used to seeing. So the square root of x from over here, and negative 16 divided by negative 4 is positive 4. Okay, to get rid of the square root, and we're back to this guy. We're going to take and we're going to square both sides. So this squared and this squared. So we end up with x equals 16. So does that check? Let's see. We plug this in for a check. We plug a 16 in everywhere that there is an x. So we're going to do the square root of 16 minus 12. And we want to know if that equals 2 minus the square root of 16. Okay, so over here we've got 16 minus 12, so it's going to be the square root of 4. Over here on the left, we want to know if that equals 2 minus 4. Oh, we can already see this is probably not going to work. In fact, if you were there, you'd probably have enough information. But let's continue on down. Square root of 4 is 2. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. 2 does not equal negative 2, so therefore there are no real solutions to this equation. So we ended up with an extraneous solution. All right, so that doesn't work. All that work to find out it doesn't work. Sometimes that's actually more useful, especially in science. That's the whole thing of science, is trying to disprove your hypothesis. If you can disprove it, you should theoretically be just as happy as the other way around. Okay, so let's do one more example, and then we're going to call it quits for this video. So we've got 3 times the 4th root, of 2n plus 6 minus 6 equals 0. Okay, so we're going to do a lot like we did on that first problem, and we are going to go in and isolate the radical. So we're going to add 6 to both sides. Okay, so those cancel. So we end up with 3 times the 4th root of 2n plus 6 equals 6. All right, so we're going to divide both sides by 3. Divide both sides by 3. These cancel out, leaving us with just the 4th root of 2n plus 6, and that equals 2. Now to get rid of a 4th root, instead of squaring it, we're going to raise it to the 4th. So we're going to raise both sides to the 4th. So that to the 4th and that to the 4th. The 4th and 4th roots cancel out, leaving us with 2n plus 6 equals 2 to the 4th is 16, because 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. All right, now we're running out of space. Sorry, this is getting a little bit of a mess. We're going to subtract 6 from both sides. And we're going to bring this up here. And we're going to have 2n equals 10. Then we're going to divide that 2 off. Divide both sides by 2. These cancel, leaving us with n equals 5. So let's double check to make sure that checks. Check to see if it checks. Ha ha ha. So we're going to have 3 times the 4th root of 2 times 5 plus 6 minus 6. We want to know if that equals 0. Sorry for the mess. I only have so much screen on the screen. So we have 3 times the 4th root of 10 plus 6 is 16. Minus 6. Does that equal 0? 4th root of 16 is 2. So 3 times 2. 3 times 2 minus 6. Does that equal 0? 6 minus 6 equals 0. So 0 equals 0. It checks. Our answer is n equals 5. That does it for this chapter. In our next chapter, we're going to take a look at exponential functions. Hope to see you there. Adios and good night.